Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and we continue with Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. We're starting a new chapter this week. We're in 37, 37a. There's going to be a B, maybe even a C. This one is called Fear Not. Hallelujah Adonai kol goyim, shabechu kol haumim, ki gavar alenu chasdo ve'emet Adonai leolam, hallelujah. As if a man flees from the lion and the bear attacks him. Kasher yanus ish mipnei ha'ari upag'o hadov. This is the prophet Amos 5:19. This is a difficult verse in an even more difficult chapter, as God is rebuking the hell out of the house of Israel because of their idolatry. But the long and the short of it is that one trouble will come after the next, each with its own characteristic. If I keep on reading this verse, this is what you're going to get. And if a man flees from a lion and a bear attacks him, and he comes to the house and leans his hat on the wall, and a serpent bites him, and so on and so forth. Okay? So let's see what Rabbi Eliezer says about this. The lion, who's the lion? This is Laban, he says, who chased after Jacob to snatch his nefesh, his life. The word is lachtof, to grab, to snatch, even to kidnap. The Radal says that in Yalkut Shimoni, on this very verse, it translates as litrof, as in devour, just like Judah said to Jacob, tarof toraf Yosef, Joseph has been devoured, litrof. That's what a wild animal does. Language we can see also in Psalms 7:3, which says, lest he tear my nefesh like a lion, pen itrof ke'ariye nafshi, rendering it to pieces with no one to save me. He continues to say that Laban only had an interest in killing Jacob, and not his own sons or his wives, meaning Jacob's sons and his wives, as we read him saying, they are all mine, right? We've been discussing this over the last few weeks. He wanted everything back except the man in whose merit he received all his goodness. And we all know that he was very close to doing it as well, unless God did not intervene and warned him to not even speak to Jacob the following day. This is also why we are commanded in Deuteronomy 26. We'll start from verse 1. And it will be when you come into the land which the Lord your God gives you for an inheritance, and you possess it and settle in it, that you shall take for the first of all fruits of the ground which you will bring forth from your land, which the Lord your God is giving you. Notice how God is giving you, right? So land, when you come into the land which the Lord your God gives you, which you will bring from the fruit of your land, which the Lord your God is giving you. This is a hint of teachings to come. But remember, God is giving you all these things. Why? And you shall put them into a basket. This is also the same thing with the tithes. God is giving you, so you could give as well. That's why God is giving you, for no other reason. So you could partner with him in the giving process. And you shall put them in a basket and go to the place which the Lord your God will choose to have his name dwell there. That obviously we know is Jerusalem. And you shall come to the Kohen, to the priest, who will be serving in those days in the temple, and say to him, I declare this day to the Lord your God that I have come to the land which the Lord swore to our forefathers to give us. And the Kohen will take the basket from your hand, laying it before the altar of the Lord your God, and you shall call out and say before the Lord, look how important this is, before the Lord your God, an Aramean sought to destroy my forefather. Va'anita va'amarta lifnei Hashem Elohecha, Arami oved avi. And he went down to Egypt, and he sojourned there with a smaller number of people, and there he became a great and mighty and numerous nation. Just so you understand how important this encounter with Laban is, who do you think sent Jacob up there? Why do you think Jacob went there? We have to say this to the Kohen in the Beit HaMikdash, that the Aramean, Laban the Aramean, tried to destroy my forefather. Okay? Hence, litrof, to devour, to destroy like a lion. So you see, this is no small deal by any means, as Jacob's time with Laban was a precursor for his children's time in Egypt. He had to survive this, so later on his descendants can survive that. So the lion, still being a hunter and a very large cat, will lie in hiding, but the moment he stands up, he begins to pursue. He still has to sneak up on his prey because he wants to catch them off guard. But what about a bear, right? After the lion comes a bear. The bear, says Rabbi Eliezer, is his brother Esau. How does a bear operate? He stood on his path and came right at him as a calculated bear who came to kill the mothers with the children. There's a difference, you see. The lion has some shame. The bear has none, says our text, right? He was just charging. There's a difference between killing strategically for the sake of one's survival. As askew as that viewpoint may be, we're talking about, let's say, let's say even in the animal kingdom, right? When is the best time if you want to go on those African safaris, so I've been told anyway, right? Is that first make sure that all the lions and tigers or whatever, wherever you're going, that the wild beasts have been fed. Once they are full, they couldn't care less who you are. They're not going to kill you unless you mess with them. But if they're hungry, they'll come after you, right? With the bear, it's very different. It says the bear came at him to kill the mothers and the sons, meaning everybody. Nobody survived. Did Esau meet Jacob's kids? His own nieces and nephews? His own sisters-in-laws? No. But because they came from Jacob, I'm going to kill everything, all your servants, everything. Done. So, the lion has some shame. In other words, this is my purpose. The bear has none. But to straight up murder everyone and everything because you are filled with anger and hate, that's another thing entirely than, let's say, killing for the sake of hunger or survival, right? So don't get me wrong. In both these cases, and as we know from the Torah, both Laban and Esau are considered wicked. Absolutely. No question. But we have never stopped dealing with Esau until this very day. And it is only when Esau, who is Edom, who is Rome, who is the idolatrous Christian faith, will fall, that Israel will finally be able to rise because they cannot coexist by default. What did Jacob do? He stood and prayed before the holy and blessed be he and said, Master of the universe, this is not how you told me that I would return to the land of my forefathers, to my birthright, as said in Genesis 31:3. And the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your forefathers and to your birthplace, and I will be with you. God says, I'll be with you. That means no harm is going to come to you, right? Now, this is a valid question asked of God, and it raises another question. Did Jacob not believe that God had to repeat his promises to him because he was afraid of Esau, right? God already said, and I'll be with you. Come back. He told him when he was in the house of Laban. All right, it's time to come home. Don't worry, I'll be with you. As he even told him beforehand, on his way to Laban. Okay, so let's see. How many times did God promise Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that he would take care of them, and still they prayed to him? Right? How many times did God say he would deliver Israel from Egypt and bring them into the land of Israel? How many times did God tell David that his covenant with him is eternal and he will have the kingship and the land forever? Did it stop these titans among men, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, David, from praying to God even though he already told them that he would fulfill his promises? What, does that mean that they don't believe God because they don't pray, or because that they do pray? Who do you think orchestrates every single situation throughout the entire universe? This is what we always have to remember. God did exactly what he did so that every last one of them should pray to him, specifically in their moment of need. God is the one that creates these moments of need. And what did they all do? They invoked the promises that were made. That's why God does these things. Remember, Moses, how many times do we see, remember your word to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? What are the rest of the nations going to say? You took us out only to kill us over here. Don't destroy them. Remember what you told Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God's like, good point. Thank you. There you go. That's what I needed to hear. Did God need to hear this? No. We need to hear this. That's why it's all recorded. And it was because they did so, meaning invoking the promises that were made, that God got them out of a jam. And so what are we supposed to do? We all know the promises that were made to our forefathers throughout history. And that means that what? We shouldn't pray because we know the outcome? Clearly, we see how much tragedy and travesty and everything that from the history of our people, ever since the first Babylonian exile up until this very day, what we have been going through and what we currently are going through. Internally, externally, everywhere, right? But God promised, yes, we know how it's going to be in the end, but just try and imagine again, I'm going with the most recent craziness, the Holocaust, right? Not everybody in the Holocaust was bad, right? Most people weren't bad. I'm saying Jews that were members of the Enlightenment movement. In other words, we are first German citizens and then maybe we're Jews, but still, that's where the whole Reform movement really took a step up. You understand what I'm saying? So there were a few and still many Jews, millions, closer to 7 than it is to 6, had to die. Why? Innocent people, children? Why? This has nothing to do with what we know is going to happen. How it's going to happen, how long it takes, this only God knows. But the tough situations are for us to pray to him. Whether or not he answers, that is not relevant, right? Like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said. Yeah, King Nebuchadnezzar, of course God could get us out of this. But if he doesn't get us out of this, he reserves the right to get us out or not to get us out. But even if he doesn't, we're not bowing down to the idol. And it's specifically because they said that, as we learned about it, was the prophet Ezekiel who got a download from God saying, you better add a caveat to that. In other words, and if God doesn't, of course he could save us. But if he doesn't, we're still not bowing down. Because they said that, that's what got them out, right? Each case has its own thing, okay? You can't say, well, why didn't God? Because we don't know why. But we know what happens when you get killed because you are a Jew. Shamayim, right? Straight up to the highest parts of the world to come. So essentially, for whatever trauma that might cause, the person dies. That's it. There's no more suffering. They don't even suffer. They don't even go to hell. They don't even have any corrections because within that trauma before death, that is where their soul is already corrected. They're done, right? Malachei Elyon. Okay, so again, first of all, like we said, no one knows the exact outcome. That's why we pray, as there are options given depending entirely on our behavior. And second, we're looking at this wrong. Unlike the other nations, God actually gave us something to pray for, something to invoke, something to remind him, but rather us, about the promises that were made. So when we repeat them, it builds our confidence, our trust, our bitachon, that God and his word is forever. Jacob continues and says, now my brother Esau is coming to kill me, and he does not fear you, he's saying to God, which is why I fear him. You see, when I say first thing that comes to mind is think of those that are pulling the strings. Think of all your governments in the world, politics, everyone. There is no straight politician. I mean, the good ones are dead. Not even all the good ones are dead. But again, if you speak up, you are no longer with us, right? You know how this works. When someone is God-fearing, and I mean for real, not that they play dress up or that they're all talk, but that they know, and you know, everyone knows that they fear the repercussions of the master of the universe. That sees and knows all. He knows what you're doing behind closed doors. He knows if you're putting on a show. He knows what you're going to do. It's already before him. Everything you have done is already there. You can trust, though, that a person that genuinely fears God, you can trust that it's either going to deter them or at least limit bad behavior. In other words, I'm afraid. That's why I'm not doing it, because I'm afraid to get punished by God. Okay, so there's that kind of fear. Or there's fear that, like reverence, God is everywhere. It's called the Almighty for a reason. I'm not going to do this because God will know and I will know. And guess what? I'm going to have to give an answer for this one day. Why? It's not just I'm afraid of punishment. You understand? There are different levels to this. So this is also why anger, for instance, is considered a form of idolatry. Because at that moment, the moment that you get angry, I mean, truly angry, you have no God. Now, how many times do we get angry? I get angry, I'll say, I mean, I don't want to say, let's say once a day, but it happens often, right? Where we get from the smallest thing, and it's at that moment that you just lose it. And if you allow that to fester, you might do something stupid, you see? So at that moment, even the most pious of Jews can slip up and do something they will forever regret. Now imagine a person who, in their mind, does not answer to anyone, right? Of those people, be afraid. Be very afraid. We know who we're talking about here. Now think of your own governmental leaders who shape your lives, or the drug companies who are the biggest gangsters in the world, with no one looking over their shoulders, because even the people looking over their shoulders are the governments. Everyone is crooked. Everyone is dirty. You see, why is this happening in the world right now? Like I said, read Masechet Sotah, tractate, the Mishnah Sotah, Perek Tet, chapter 9, at the end. It will tell you exactly what is happening. God is dismantling every single system and establishment in the world before the coming of Mashiach. Why? Because so long as there is another system out there, you will put your trust in them. You will put your trust in Him. You will put your trust in anything or anyone other than God. God is helping us by removing all of these, because naturally, right? It's easy to trust in man, right? Take the other religion, for instance. It's all about the man, right? That's how easy it is. But what happens if it's gone? What do? We don't know what to do because we've put all our faith in this man, and now there's no man. You see? Okay. Plus, it says obviously in the Torah, not to trust in man. So we understand what's happening here right now. Okay, so this is why it's happening. Now, no one is looking over their shoulders. No one is regulating anything. The systems that they say, the regulatory systems, we can't even trust them either. Everybody is bought and paid for. So now, would you put something in your body, for instance, from a source that you know for a fact already, based on nothing more than their track record, that they have no fear of God, complete disregard for human life, and have destroyed so many lives that Hitler, Stalin, Lenin would be envious of? This happened today. Now look what comes next. From here, our sages say that you should not fear an officer or governor, rather ruler, but one who has no fear of heaven. Sure, but what happens when they are one and the same? Have you started praying to God yet? Do you see what He's doing in the world? This is all to get you to pray to Him. In a show of hands, right now, feel free to sit at home, really. In a show of hands, how many of you trust your governments and executive decision makers who dictate how you should live your lives? Good for us. Okay. It's time to pray. And why is it time to pray? Who do you think places these idiots on their thrones and seats of power? That's God, right? Nothing is by accident. So you should see how corrupt they are. Are you still going to give them your voice, as we call it in Israel? Are you still going to do this? Okay, so you have to really do a choshvim. You have to think, and you have to reassess who you are and where you stand. Proverbs 21:1. A king's heart is like rivulets of water in the Lord's hand. Wherever He wishes, He turns it. These are the rulers, right? But we also have learned that the rulers are the face of the generation. The reason you have leaders the way you do, the reason we have leaders the way that we do, because really, that's really what our generation looks like. So you can see what the world looks like right now based on its leaders, right? Okay. Does this mean that you should do what your rulers tell you to do? Like everything? No, that's just plain stupid. The leaders you have are the ones you deserve, as they are the face of your generation. And so I think it's pretty obvious to say, we ugly. So Esau stood on his way like a bear, calculated and focused on killing the mothers and the children. Now, from this point, it gets interesting in the sense that we're about to receive another take on the man that wrestled with Jacob, okay? From here on out, it's going to be, we need to build our base before we start going further. Because we have things that we have, let's say, from the 5 books of Moses, and then we have things from the Midrash, we have things that the commentators say. I'm going to try and present some of the big points over here. We've presented these things before over the last, 3, 4, 5 years, however long we've been doing this now. But you need to understand this because then I want to build on top of that, on top of that understanding. Okay? So, it's well known in the overwhelming majority of commentators that they clearly state that it was obviously not a man but an angel, specifically the angel of Esau, Edom, just like Rashi says, Saro shel Esau, the minister of Esau, right? That's Satan, right? This is the angel of death. And if the question is, why does the Torah not say he was why he was an angel, but rather a man, is because he came out in man form. The same can be said of the 3 angels appeared to Abraham, but the Torah says they were men. I've given plenty of teachings, like we said, on this particular topic, including how the Christians think it was Jebus, because it says in Genesis 32:29, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, because you have commanded power with Elohim and with men, and you have prevailed. That's what it says, right? The reason this doesn't hold water is because God himself said in Exodus 20, the 10 Commandments, I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall not have other Elohim in my presence. Lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim, other Elohim. Al panai, before me, instead of me, standing in my stead, who you will pray to get to me. It doesn't work that way. 10 Commandments. God said this directly. These are direct God's words. Moses didn't even come over here and soften it for the people, okay? God said there are other Elohim. The difference being that he created them. It's a big G, capital G, and a lowercase g. And then there's the question of Genesis 32:31. And Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, I saw an angel, or rather Elohim, face to face, and my soul was saved. Vayikra Yaakov b'shem hamakom Peniel. Peniel, as in Penei, the face of El. Ki ra'iti Elohim, because I saw Elohim face to face, and my life was saved. Nafshi, nefesh, not soul, the way it's translated. Usually when a mortal looks upon the true face of an angel, he cannot live. Now, if any of y'all out there who sent me these questions, you're watching these things right now regarding angels, listen to this. This just so happens to be the class this week. If you see an angel, you cannot live. You're dead. Dead. So the fact that Jacob did so was a testament to his piety. In other words, that he saw the angel face to face and he lived. It showed how holy he was. But when David looked upon the angel holding the sword pointing at the threshing floor where the temple was to be built, David almost died. Instantly, after that, immediately, David lost all his strength. He became like an old man. He was constantly cold. It was after he saw an angel, right? And probably not even its truest, most, not in its truest spiritual form. Nevertheless, it was enough to completely drain the life out of him, almost completely. And all this because he saw the face of an angel. And this would not be the last time we would see something almost identical confirming the legitimacy of these claims. And that is the story of Samson in the book of Judges 13. Now I'm going to read a few verses over the course of this chapter so you get the point, and also you'll be able to see the copy-paste that Christianity did, right? And there was one man from Torah, from the family of the Danites, from Dan, right, the tribe of Dan, whose name was Manoach, and his wife was barren and had not born, right? So she's barren, no kid. An angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold, now you are barren and have not born. You shall conceive and bear a son. Okay, Great. She then tells her husband, whose name is Manoach, about what happened. Then we jump to, let's say, verse 17. And Manoach said to the angel of the Lord, what is your name, that when your word will come, and we may do you honor? And the angel of the Lord said to him, why do you presently ask for my name, since it is hidden? Just like the angel who was wrestling why do you want my name, right? Although he answers it in the verse, if you read it in the Hebrew, that's his name. But you could read it in the Hebrew. Now, watch this. And it was, when the flame went up from upon the altar toward the heaven, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar, and Manoach and his wife looked on, and they fell on their faces to the ground, right? Because before that, an angel of the Lord does not appear to them as an angel of the Lord, but rather in the form of a man, because they can't see the angel of the Lord. And the angel of the Lord did not continue to appear to Manoach and to his wife. Then Manoach knew that he was an angel of the Lord. Oh, then he did, but before he didn't. Why? Because he looked like a dude. And Manoach said to his wife, listen, this is verse 22. We shall surely die because we have seen Elohim. What? Did they see God? No. Clearly no. Clearly no. Hebrew. Vayomer Manoach el ishto mot namut. Surely we will die. Ki Elohim ra'inu. Did they see God? No, they did not see God. And yet they saw the angel's face, although it was not in his true form, of course. Nevertheless, his concern was legitimate, because he also knows if we see a true face of the angel, we're gonna die. And my final point, which just drives this all home, are the words spoken by said angel when he spoke to Jacob in Genesis 31:29. And he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, because you have commanding power with Elohim and with men, and you have prevailed. Compared to Genesis 35:10. Later on, God said to him, Vayomer lo Elohim, Shimcha Yaakov, right? Your name is Jacob. What did the angel say to him when he struggled with him? Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. Here God says, your name is Jacob. Then he says, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name, and he named him Israel. Do you see the difference? This is the difference between Jews and specifically the Christian Messianics, okay? God is who told him that his name is Jacob in this world until the end of the world, when all the children of Jacob gather together at the final redemption, and then they will be elevated all together to the title of Israel. We can see this throughout our history. Israel is not just a name, but it is a title, and one that must be earned through trials and tribulations, i.e. the troubles of Jacob. And without carrying the name of Jacob in this world, you will never be Israel. You can't, by default. Jacob is a rite of passage, as Jacob is the one who goes through the trouble. Welcome to the life of a Jew in this world. So, who conveniently excluded the your name is Jacob? Who excluded that? This would be the angel of Edom. This is the very basis of the deception of Christianity. You have already the title of Israel without doing a lick of work, right? Hey! Guess what? Eternal life, you want salvation? Say a name and you're good to go. Don't worry about anything. Why no work? Because someone else already did it for you. Are we reading the same book? Probably not, right? Okay. It's easy, it's convenient, and it flies in the face of the 5 books of Moses, the direct word of God. This is clearly not ours, right? And clearly the way of the serpent. It's the truth, but not the whole truth. And that little percentage over there that's a lie, that's what'll get you killed. It's the part that's left out that'll cause you a lifetime of pain and deception in this world and in the next. Now, again, the reason I'm covering all of this, like all other topics, is that you have to have a base to go on. That is why I so much love teaching Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, because it teaches you from all the Torah, from Jewish thought, from Midrash and from Agadah, like we said, from the Sod and from the Pshat, from all the commentators, everything together. You're getting such an incredible picture, all put in one over here. from stories that you have hopefully read in the Tanakh that you are somewhat familiar with. But once we go into deeper concepts or different concepts, I have to re-emphasize the base. Otherwise, people will lose their minds. That's exactly what they teach you in the other religions. You don't know the base, and that's why you're easily fooled. Oh yeah, water into wine. Clearly, that's the greatest thing ever. No, it's not. Okay. So, like we said, the reason I'm covering this is to give you, or to at least establish or better establish, a base. What does the Torah say? What do the more popular commentators say? What is the general understanding and the basic consensus of what we are reading? Once you can understand this, when you are introduced to something new, it won't confuse you and throw you off your axis, but rather give you another viewpoint to look at, thereby broadening your ability to understand and accept the very method by which the Torah is learned. 70 faces, and they're all correct. So within this story of Jacob and wrestling the man, there are two other angels. That's right, two other angels, as we can read in Genesis 32:2. And Jacob went on his way, and angels of Elohim met him, right? Ve'Yaakov halach ledarko, ve'yifgeu bo malachei Elohim. The basic understanding is that these two angels, who were keeping an eye on Jacob, were the same ones by who his merit were able to return to heaven after being grounded for 138 years. And they are none other than Michael and Gabriel. Mercy, judgment. Jacob sent the angels ahead of him to his brother Esau, to the land of Seir, to the field of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, So you shall say to my master, to Esau, Thus said your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban, and I have tarried until now. Right? We discussed this verse. Im Lavan Galti. Galti is sojourned or lived. Galti is also Taryag, 613. In other words, I was able to keep the Torah, living with Lavan. Watch your step. You understand? He gave a hidden message within there. So after this takes place, and the angels return telling him that Esau is on the warpath with 400 men strong, this is where he invokes God's promise to keep him safe and to return to the land of his father. I was thinking about even putting what it says where their encounter with Laban and his 400 men, what happened over there. But that's all in the book of Joshua. You could read it. It's fascinating. Okay, I don't need to put it in here. We've already covered this before. Okay, so later that night is when he wrestled with the angel of Esau, the angel of death. And why did he do so? Or better yet, why did God make it so? This is what we're actually going to get into next class. As our text says in Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, after Jacob prays to God for help, invoking what God said, you said I should go back to the land of my father and you're going to be with me, right? What did the Holy One, blessed be he, do? He sent him an angel to save him and to deliver him from the hand of Esau. And he looked to him like a man, as said in Genesis 32:25, and Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. To save and to deliver him, says Rabbi Eliezer. What's going on here? Stick around next week to find out, God willing. So in the meantime, y'all take care now. Thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Have an incredible Tu B'Av, and have a Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.